blowing the playoffs.
The Toronto Maple Leafs were eliminated from Stanley Cup contention, a tradition celebrated by Leaf haters since 1967, and it's our annual post-mortem show right now. Yet another bitter reminder of another failed season for the Maple Leafs. But I'm Joe Chops. I'm here with the boys, Coach Frank and Bobby Bottles for the Puck and Leafs podcast. And boys, before we get to the meat and potatoes of this episode, which is where do the Maple Leafs go from here, and what seems to be one of, if not the most important offseason in this team's history in at least the last 50 some odd years. We spoke pretty much after every playoff game, but we did not get to speak after Game 5 against Florida. We were too upset, too angry about it. But now that we had couple days to let it stew and marinate, I just wanted to get your quick thoughts as to what happened in Game 5 and why did the Maple Leafs lose this series against a Florida team, which, give them credit, played really well, but the Maple Leafs should have beat them.
Well, where do you start, man? Anybody that's been watching us know that we've been breaking the games down, and there was a lot of repetition when we spoke, right? A lot of things that they weren't doing, and they, whether it was Bobby talking about the neutral zone and not giving up Florida not giving up the line, to the Leafs having issues with the forecheck, and sure enough, that's really what it came down to, that and a hot goalie, and here we are. So in a nutshell, Joel, that's kind of what it is. You can't look at Florida as an 8th seed. They went in with a lot of momentum. They got hot at the right time. They took out the best team in regular season history, essentially. But they played a style that the Leafs couldn't match. They couldn't score more than 2 goals, and that's a big issue. So that's pretty much it. They couldn't put away their chances, and the few danger chances they did have, Bobrovsky had the answer. So it was a perfect storm.
Yeah, the Maple Leafs scored 2 goals in 7 straight playoff games, which is an incredible stat for all the wrong reasons. And then we get to watch the Seattle Kraken put 3 and 4 past Ottinger like it's easy. I know they end up losing the series, but still, every year we're going to talk about this offensive juggernaut that are the Maple Leafs. They seem to struggle to score in the playoffs, but we'll get to that anyways. The biggest reason for me why they lost that series, it's simple. Matthews, Marner, and Tavares, 1 goal between the 3 of them in 5 games. They all had chances. They just could not bury. I know a lot of people had criticisms of Sheldon Keefe over the series, and maybe he could have done a couple of things differently, but there is no coach in this league that can overcome 3 of their best players not producing in 5 straight games. Look at Edmonton. Leon Draisaitl was as hot can be in the first round. And then in the second round, he put up 1 point in the remaining 5 games of that series against Vegas, and Edmonton's out. So you need your stars to be stars, and Matthews and Marner in particular did not play like it in that series. And sure, you can give Florida some credit, but when you're as highly paid as they are, and when you are superstars as they, I'm sure, would like to think they are, it doesn't matter who you play against and what the other team's doing. You need to be able to come through in those big moments, and they couldn't do it yet again.
And, here's something that'd be interesting for you guys to note here. So I did a little detective work knowing that we were going to do this. So one thing I found interesting in terms of their scoring punch is that the Leafs, to piggyback off your point, Joe, the Leafs were 10th out of 16 teams in playoffs goal scoring this playoffs. So the bottom or the back half of the teams, and 9th in regular season scoring, which are both a regression from last year's team, who were at the top of regular season scoring. And they did have some goals against Tampa, but all I'm saying is the way this team is trending, or what there's from year to year, maybe they're not the high octane team that we think they are, or think that they should be, and it's showing because the goals aren't there when they need to be.
But Frankie,
stats don't lie.
Okay, this team scored less than last year's team, but you would agree this year's roster much better than last year's roster.
100%, absolutely.
I don't get it.
Joe, I can tell you what it is, but we're going to get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
It's very simple and straightforward. They're a perimeter team, and if they weren't going to do the things that made them successful in the first round, as in going to the net and getting to the dirty areas to score, it's always the same stuff. And I'll leave it at that because we're going to talk about it.
I just want to talk brief. Bobby, did you have to say something? Sorry, it looked like
go ahead. I think the other thing was Florida kind of knew what they were. They were very dedicated to being a checking team. Tampa has like some offensive players, and I actually think Carolina would have been a nice matchup for the Leafs because they also have offensive players. But I think Florida said, we're not going to run and gun. We're just going to play a nice, tight, clean. They basically played like, we call them road games, right? Where you just tight checking, simple hockey. Sometimes in these really tight, close series, it's little details. It's, turnover here or turnover there, which cost them a game. Sometimes it's, maybe a little interference on an overtime goal. But in these series that are so tight, it's just sometimes just the margin between winning and losing is just so razor thin that I don't think Florida was like this superior, like vastly superior team. It was a series that ended in 5, but probably could have gone either way. Kind of like the Leafs series in the first round against Tampa. Could have probably gone either way. So, we can talk about the deficiency of this team, which they obviously have some, but it's a playoff series, and we've seen them lose to Columbus. We've seen them lose to Montreal. We shouldn't be surprised to see them lose to a team that's probably better than those two teams. So,
fair point. I just want to touch upon the officiating because you just mentioned it. The overtime series-winning goal by Nick Cousins, clearly interference by Radko Gudas. Not so much the lane drive. I didn't have so much a problem with that. And at my first glimpse of the TV, I didn't think anything of it. But he clearly grabs onto Calle Jarnkrok's stick. And because of that, Jarnkrok can't get his stick in the shooting lane. And Cousins has an open shot right down the pipe to put it on net. Listen, this is what's frustrating. Last year, they disallowed a goal in a Game 7 on an interference play that is never called. And then to see the Leafs on the short end of the stick on this one, where they're the one that is being interfered with, it's like we got the short end of the stick in both occasions. So I understand the frustration from Leafs Nation. Having said that, officiating is not the reason why they lost the series, although the officiating and the way this series was called definitely helped the Panthers.
Why are we surprised at this point? Jerry Bettman must be just so fired up about this Final Four.
We could have a whole episode about why he's the worst commissioner in sports.
Look at this Final Four.
But
this Final Four, not one of these teams play in weather that's like colder than 10 degrees.
Nobody
in the winter.
Cares about any of them. Maybe Vegas. They got a good fan base, but like Florida and their 85 fans, give me a break.
This Gary must be going crazy.
The Leafs-Panthers series was the least penalized series since 2015 Chicago-Minnesota. Now, riddle me this one, Batman. How do the Panthers, who were the most penalized team in the regular season and one of the most penalized teams in the first round, all of a sudden learn how to play so clean in the second round?
He doesn't care about Canadian teams.
We've already
established this.
Paul Maurice's 5-against-1 penalties. Like, your team gets called on penalties because you take a lot of penalties. You do a lot of infractions. You're going to get called for it. But his little subtle gesture like that, it evened up the series. They're like, from now on, 2 power plays each, and that's it. And that definitely helps Florida, whose penalty kill was atrocious against Boston. It wasn't good against the Leafs, although Bobrovsky covered up some of it.
Let's not make this about the refereeing. It was bad, but Joe, I've been watching a lot of hockey and it's bad throughout, man. It's bad throughout, Frankie.
Look
at the suspension with
how many power plays did Edmonton get in their series?
The only difference is that is an elite power play that carried over into the playoffs. So that's
but the league knows that you give Edmonton a power play, it's pretty much a guaranteed goal. Yet they still give them power plays. which they should get if it is a penalty.
That was before Draisaitl got his arm almost taken off and only got a 1-game suspension. I don't know. Who's doing? Is it George Peros?
Yeah.
I think he's fallen down a few too many times because I don't understand like these somehow. I hate to go off on a tangent here because we're going to get back onto this, but I don't know how Edmonton gets a defenseman suspended the exact same length as Pietrangelo gets suspended, and yet Darnell Nurse got like an instigator, and that was a 1-game suspension and a slash.
Because it's the NHL and they want the easy way out. That's the easy decision.
Yeah, well, it should have been like a 3-game suspension for Pietrangelo. That was a ridiculous slash. But anyway,
let's one more than what Nurse got. At least
3
one
for
more.
a supposed hit to Cernak's head. So
hey, let's go. But where did the Leafs go from here? I think that's what everyone wants to know.
All right.
So where do the Leafs go from here? Let's get to it. So I mentioned before, this is probably the most important offseason for the Maple Leafs since they last won a cup. So what is that? 56, 57 years we're going on now. They're literally at a fork in the road on several fronts. Their GM, their coach, their franchise centerman. Now, the first thing that needs to be decided here, and decided quickly, is the future of GM Kyle Dubas. I know he spoke on Media Day about possibly taking some time off this year because, this past year was really difficult for him and his family. And I'm sure being the GM of the Maple Leafs comes a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. So I could totally see that. But it sounds like MLSE, they want to keep him on board and they'd like him to stay. I think he does end up staying. But the reason why this decision needs to come really quickly is because Austin Matthews, we know, is entering the final year of his contract. And with that, a full no movement clause kicks in on July 1st. So they need to know what Austin Matthews' intentions are and have him signed before then so that they don't lose him for nothing the following year. That is a mistake that cannot happen. Now, Matthews in the media day said it's his intention to stay with the Maple Leafs, and he'd like to do it before July 1st. So good news for Leaf fans. And if you're a Leaf fan and think that the Maple Leafs should move off from Austin Matthews, just stop. Like, he's still one of the best players in the league. And the Leafs are much better with Austin Matthews than they are without him. So I think it's in the Leafs' best interest and Austin's best interest to get this done. I'm going to ask you guys, though, and I was thinking about this contract extension. Before, I thought that Austin has all the leverage, and he does have most of it. But hear me out here. I think the Maple Leafs may have a tiny bit of leverage themselves with Matthews. This is yet another playoff where Matthews struggled to produce in the most meaningful games. He had a really good series against Tampa, and one of the main reasons why they were able to get past them. But no goals in 5 straight games against the Panthers. And you look at what McKinnon signed for, 12.6 for 8 years. McKinnon's won a cup. I believe he's been nominated for a Hart Trophy. I'm not sure if he's won it yet, Frankie. Maybe you know. I don't think he has. Oh. So you could go to Austin and say, listen, we want to keep you here. We know you want to stay. We want to pay you fairly, but this isn't something where you can hit a grand slam out of the park here. Let's do something reasonable where there's still money left on the table for the other guys to build a better team around you. Something like $13 million over 8 years. It still makes him the highest paid player in the league at the moment. And you get him for the full 8 years. I think that's a win for both teams.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, there's a lot to take in there, Joe. Personally, I think we're putting the cart before the horse. And what I mean by that is Austin Matthews, yes, is the centerpiece of this team. He should be the focal point of this team. He should be the captain of this team, to be quite honest with you. Although Riley did show me a lot this year, but let's just call it like we see it. I've maintained the stance that if Kyle Dubas is not the general manager of this team, it's going to be increasingly difficult to re-sign Austin Matthews. Not saying they can't re-sign him, but just judging by the reaction we got from the guys, during the media day, how they all love Kyle Dubas, and hey, I would too if they gave him the money they got, prior to their
Good
first
point,
deals being
yes.
signed. But I look at it like this, Joe. Let's start at the top, okay? Does it bother anybody that this team is being run by a first-time president, a first-time GM, and a first-time head coach, right? So there's a lot of mistakes being made. They're kind of learning on the job. And this is where they got to kind of learn from their mistakes. They paid these guys without winning. They kind of set the bar for that, right? So they've already set that precedence. So now they can't go backwards. You got to go forwards.
But that's the leverage that they have now, Frankie. That's what I'm saying. They haven't won anything. So can they not say to him, listen, okay, you've won a Hart Trophy, but we haven't had the team success, whereas McKinnon has, and he's your comparable for us. Yeah. And I think that's fair. What are you supposed to say if you're Austin? Yeah, no, I should blow the doors off what McKinnon's making.
The thing with that too is, and I guess no one's gonna cry, for Kyle Dubas here, but like he gave these guys money at the time where he thought the cap was going up significantly.
Yep.
We all said, we've said time and time again, COVID obviously put the cap at a standstill. It is what it is. Boo-hoo. You move on. And, Dubas has done a good job with cap gymnastics to kind of move around that. But what does everybody say? The core four are taking up a lot of money, a lot of the cap of this team. Hence why we don't have the results. Dubas actually sees himself in the same position now if he comes back. The cap is supposed to be going up after next year quite significantly. But is it a for sure? No, but signs are pointing that way. So when I look at Matthews, and I don't think he's going to want 8 years, to be quite honest with you. I know it's a different time now where he's 27 years old walking into UFA. If I'm the Leafs, I don't want him for 8 years. And I don't mean that as a shot to him, but how many 8-year contracts have we seen actually work in the NHL, right? Not many, other than maybe did Crosby sign for 8? I can't remember.
Yes.
But what I'm trying to get at is you're getting a guy who's 27, who's in literally the prime of his career. Some people would say your best results come from when you're 23, 24 years old. But I'm looking more at like a 5-year deal, which would take him to 31, 32 years old, which would be the equivalent of the 8 years, would be 10 years of his service, plus the extra 3 on entry level, right? So it's like the 5-year term makes the most sense for me. And usually when you get a term less than the max at 8 years, you're probably going to have to pay a little bit more. So yeah, Joe McKinnon is the comparison. And I would see this coming in at a 5-year, $13.5, $14 million deal.
See, I don't like the 5-year. I don't want 5-year anymore. I want at least 6. And he's 25. Right?
Extra year.
He's 25 years old right now. He turns 26 in September. So he's a year younger, pretty much, from what you're saying. Like a 6-year takes him till he's 32. And then, maybe he takes a little bit less at that point because he's out of his prime. I can understand that, but like enough of the short-term deals. Let's sign him up long-term. I'm willing to bet that Austin Matthews is going to figure it out. I know he hasn't entirely in the playoffs yet, but I'm willing to make that bet more than I'm willing to bet that trading him that we're going to get better with what we get in return. And that's going to work out better.
Yeah.
I'm placing my bet on Austin because he's shown that he could be the best player in the league. Listen, Austin Matthews, and I'm saying Austin Matthews is one of my favorite players, okay? He did not have a great year this year by his standards. He didn't. It's fact. He only scored 40, which for him is not great. And how many times, Frankie and Bobby, did we say this year, oh, Austin was the best player on the ice? Dominating. Not many, exactly.
Not many.
So it was an off year. If Austin Matthews can play in the playoffs like he did in his Hart Trophy winning regular season, like it's there. It's just got to be transferred over. So I'm willing to bet that he's able to find that game and put it into the playoffs, even though he has had, 6-7 tries already and it hasn't happened yet.
Joe, you're banking on a lot because you've seen the guy do it, and it's possible, but it's also the environment. It's also the guys around him. It's also who he plays with. You take a guy, I'm sure we're going to talk about him, but you take a guy like Mitch Marner, who essentially is known for making guys better. He's a puck distributor, but he's also a defensive player who can kind of take care of the defensive role on that line, which opens up Austin Matthews to do what he wants to do, right? You remove him from your line, and you say, for example, you go with Bunting and Nylander. I'm just giving an example. Austin Matthews now has to play a little bit more defense before he can get to the offense. So it is a different change of the game, right? But being as good as he is, you're right, Joe. We didn't see him hunt down pucks as much as we did last year. He led the league in takeaways as a forward, right? Didn't see that this year, and we know he struggled with the hand or the wrist, I think it was at times too. Which it hampered him. He had to take what? When Joe was it 2 weeks, 3 weeks off, whatever it was.
Well, how many times did he beat a goalie clean with a shot this year? It feels like it didn't happen very often.
But also, yeah, he actually didn't have that shot till maybe around December, where he said he started to feel good again, and started the velocity started to come back. The problem is too, Joe, as you get older, getting healthier gets harder. We all see it. We all know it. It's happening to us. We're getting ready for baseball season soon. I can't feel my legs. So all I'm trying to say is they're going through the same things that anybody would, but at a higher intensity, a higher level. And he's got to find it because he seems like a pretty competitive guy. I remember when they were playing those Oilers games, he would always kind of want to one-up McDavid or when he wants to one-up Eichel when he was with the Sabres. We need that Austin Matthews back. It's there, but you also got to help him achieve that too with kind of the who he plays with and the staff around him. So it'd be interesting to see what happens.
How would you guys feel about a 3-year deal?
I hate it. Stop. No.
I love a 3-year deal.
Explain why, please.
There he is, devil advocate.
Do you want to know why?
Yeah, please.
Because he'll become a free agent at the same time there's a young man in Edmonton that will also become a free agent.
Well, Bobby, that young man in Edmonton will become a free agent just about the time that John Tavares' contract ends. So there's $11 million for him right there.
I think he's going to get more than 11, but
that's a start, isn't it?
It's a start. I think, I know it's a pipe dream at this point and it's hard to talk about, but if you can kind of tie those together and have some sort of flexibility when 97 becomes available, because I think he's going to play for Toronto at some point. He's going to want to play for the Leafs at some point.
I actually think, and this is my take here. My thinking is that there's a better possibility of McDavid leaving Edmonton if they win the cup than if they don't win the cup, because it would be mission accomplished and then he can move on. Whereas, like, Edmonton's a really good team right now. If they continue to be really close, but not get there just yet, I can't see him ditching at that point.
Oh, hold on a second. Did you say Edmonton was a very good team?
They are, Frankie. They are, man. This year they took a turn. I think I wouldn't have said it before this season, but this season they were pretty much the best team in the league in the second half.
Okay, let's agree to disagree there. That's fine.
I think he's leaving irregardless. All right. Anyway, so
let's get back to the core other than Austin Matthews. So
I have a question though before you guys go. If he doesn't sign, let's say he says, I want to, do you trade him?
You have to.
You have to.
Yeah. So then the next few weeks are going to be very important into dictating.
Very important. And that's why they got to get the GM figured out like ASAP, like yesterday, pretty much.
What if is there some sort of correlation you think between Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner? Like he says there's got to be some sort of behind the
he's too good for that, man. He should not be relying on anybody like that. He's too good for that. I'm sorry.
Don't think though that he's going to say?
It's possible, but I don't think so.
Okay.
So let's talk about the core, because every end of season media availability, Kyle Dubas is asked about the core 4 specifically. And usually he shoots it right down that, these are the guys we're going to win with. I believe in them. But this year it was different. This year, and I'm paraphrasing, it was basically we're not going to shut down any idea that makes us better. Didn't say for sure that he was going to trade someone, just the idea that they're going to consider everything at this point, which I think is the right mindset to have. Now let's look at the other 3 guys that we haven't talked about. Now, I think ideally the guy they'd love to move is Tavares. Listen, he scored the biggest goal for this franchise in 19 years, and there were moments where he was good, but it's obvious the pace of the game right now for Tavares is a struggle, especially against that Panther team. He could not keep up, and he's probably got to move to the wing at some point. He was asked if he'd move his no-trade clause, and he said pretty much no, he wants to stay here. He's committed to the Leafs. Okay.
What do you expect him to say?
Yeah. So now you move to the next 2. It's either Willie or it's Mitch. Now, Willie's got 1 year left on his deal, and Mitch has 2 years left on his deal, but his no move clause kicks in on July 1st as well. So if you're going to move him, it's got to be before then. Should the Maple Leafs trade Mitch Marner or William Nylander? And if so, which one are you looking to deal?
All right. So let me get on my soapbox for a second here. I'm going to rewind the tape. You guys know how I feel. I'm on record as saying you cannot win with Mitch Marner. And you guys, what are you talking about? We're having the same conversation here, guys, and I'm not getting away from it, all right? He wears an A on this team. He's a leader on this team. He's incredibly skilled. He's up for the Selke this year as a winger, which is not easy to do, and on and on and on. But again, guys, he doesn't do the little things to win, right? We talked about stopping on pucks and do like all this little stuff. Again, it's the same thing. He's very tentative. You know, when things get physical or playoff hockey, he's unsure what to do with the puck. The space becomes limited. He becomes inefficient and ineffective. That's what I saw. Paying $10.5 million for ineffectiveness after 7 years, playoff years, it's absolutely unacceptable for me as a fan. It's unacceptable. So now Dubas says, well, I'm open to trading one of the core four. Bang, the door's open now, right? It has to be looked at like the Tkachuk situation. I am not one to trade him for the sake of change, but it has to be the right situation, and that's the perfect scenario. A star for a star swap, or you lose the trade. It's that simple.
So who's the Tkachuk out there for this year?
Well, I don't think there really is, but you can look at it a couple different ways. There are teams out there that are either desperate to get better, or they have very inexperienced GMs that you may be able to take advantage of. I look at Philadelphia as being one, but they have a new president and GM, Keith Jones and Daniel Briere. They will not accept a rebuild, and if they do, they got to get bad really quickly because they're not bad with the roster that they have. I look at a guy like Joe. You know, I'm going to say Travis Konechny. It was a guy that I've been looking at for a long time. Be a perfect fit. I'm not saying it's a 1-for-1, but that's the type of guy I look at in a package.
But Frankie, in a package like that, Konechny and let's say Provorov or something, in that situation, the Leafs are Calgary. Marner is the Tkachuk.
But
this is the problem that I have with these scenarios.
But
it's like,
Joe,
okay, well, they got to do like Kawhi, like, you know, the Raptors, they made the Kawhi deal. Okay, who's the Kawhi, you know, caliber NHLer that's available at this time? Who's the Matthew Tkachuk NHLer available at this time? I don't want, like, Travis Konechny, I want to add him, but not for Mitch Marner.
But Joe, you're also not taking into a fact, again, it's the cap hit. You can take that other money and do something else with it. And I'm going to get to it because you're going to see where I'm going with this, right? Why not a team like LA who's ready to explode? You got guys like Velarde, Kempe, Turcotte as possible looks. LA's an amazing team, but, you know, trouble scoring was an issue with them on the wing. There's a guy that instantly makes them a contender, right? They have young young stars up and coming that they could probably look at, put in a package. I'm just saying, it's not a rebuild. They're not asking for like picks and you know, you're asking for guys who are about to break out, right? Marner's signed for 2 more years, so there's no extension needed on a deal. So you're getting cost certainty in terms of his contract, right? So he's certainly the easier of, I'd say, Nylander and Tavares to deal. But the one glaring thing I think this team needs more than anything is a top pairing defenseman. Morgan Rielly was very good in the playoffs, but during the regular season, he was not good.
Who gives a you know what about the regular season? He brought it in the playoffs, and he was their number one defenseman.
But Joe,
although I'm with you, I want another defenseman like Morgan who can push the pace to create offense on another pair. I think they desperately need that.
So I look at a team who had a very troubled year in terms of injuries, who just lost their captain, and one trade can easily put them back up there. And look at the Colorado Avalanche, who have a myriad of defensemen. I'm looking at one guy. I'm looking at Bowen Byram as a guy that I'm saying, hey, you know what? That makes a lot of sense in terms of a deal. Again, I'm not talking straight up, but that is a centerpiece of a guy who, behind Cale Makar, could be a number one defenseman on almost every single team in the NHL. That's a type of deal you look to make. That
See, I don't know
easily
about that. Like,
is
Byram's good, but you never know if a guy's at number one until he has to be a number one, and then you're able to see like he's able to be sheltered because Makar's on that team with him. I'm not against trading Mitch Marner, but like you said, it's got to be for the right deal. I'm not doing it just for the sake of doing it. And I think to trade him, it's a really tough deal to make, man. And these 2-for-1 and 3-for-1 and 4-for-1 swaps for Marner, like,
well,
we're the Kachuk in that deal. Marner is the Kachuk in that deal. I don't like those deals.
Okay, here's why you're not trading Tavares. Other than the fact that he makes $11 million a year.
You're not trading Tavares because it's not going to waive his no trade clause. It's not even worth discussing.
But you know what, Joe? The destination, again, let's look at LA for a second, right? You have a defenseman there who's 2 years older than he is, making $11 million, but he's also making 28 minutes a night. You wouldn't shuffle the deck chairs a little bit?
If I'm the Leafs, yes. But Tavares will not let that happen.
Why, Joe? Joe, you're telling me the guy wouldn't?
He was just asked, and he said
California? No. On a team like LA who could win, it's an attractive spot, right?
I don't even know if LA would do that, but yeah, I would make that swap, sure.
But that's the type of deal you're making for Tavares, if any, because you're not going to throw a first-round pick to move that contract. So now I'm getting to your other point. What's your other alternative, Joe? You got
My fear is they trade Nylander, and he's the one guy that I feel like is able to produce in the playoffs more than any of the other guys. He was their best forward against Florida.
For me, that's a tough trade to make because you probably have to add an extension on top of that, which is more like the Kachuk deal because they have to put an extension on that to get the value of it. And that's not an easy deal to make.
I agree.
And you kind of, back yourself into a corner as to who can make that trade. So your return, believe it or not, your return might be worse for Nylander than it is for Marner just based on the situation, right? So like what I'm getting at is if you move Tavares to the wing, which probably is your safest bet next year, unfortunately, he cannot play second line center anymore. You have now opened a massive hole in your second line center spot because I can tell you right now that what I got from that media day, Ryan O'Reilly's not coming back. It's probably a good bet he's not coming back. So who is now playing your second line center? So now you're using your chip as Mitch Marner to either trade for a second line center or a number one defenseman. That's your piece, Joe. That has to be a deal that if Tavares is staying, you got to get somebody else to play in the middle. Who else are you going to trade to get yourself a second line center back?
I think why not try Mitch at center? He played center in junior, I believe, and he can handle the defensive responsibility of it. I think you actually mentioned that on Twitter, Frankie, and I really like that idea.
Actually, I mentioned Nylander at center, not Marner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like Mitch actually better at center than Nylander. But I have news for Leafs Nation. Like, I think the Leafs will explore all possibilities, but I still think there's a really good chance, man, that they just run it back with these guys and hope that listen. Did Detroit move players off their core when they were the best? Everyone said best team. They got to win, and they kept failing. First round. They lost to the Leafs. They lost to the Sharks, and the Sharks were terrible that year.
He also didn't have a cap, Joe.
I understand that.
No,
but
you don't. They added Shanahan, Larry Murphy, Luke Robitaille, Brett Hall. Like, come on in, guys. Come on in.
Robitaille, Hall, those guys were in 2002, way after. For their first cups, they added Shanahan. That was the guy. And Larry Murphy from the Leafs. And I understand there was no cap, but there were people at that time saying, you got to move off from Yzerman. He can't do it. Can't do it in the playoffs. The same people, like, you're not a winner until you are. And sometimes you just got to keep knocking on the door until you eventually break it.
I think your comparison
I don't know.
is more the Washington Capitals when they won versus the Red Wings. I think that would be more of a
Sure. That's another example. Sure. I mean, success is not linear in sports. It isn't. You could look at Pittsburgh and Chicago. They won so quick with their cores, but that's not the norm, man.
Here's my favorite, though. And then I'll hand over to Bobby. Here's my favorite. Whenever a team wins the Stanley Cup, all 31 teams look at that model and say, oh, maybe, we got to do more of that.
Yeah,
what
that's
happens
true.
if Vegas wins the cup, or I know Seattle's out now, but if Seattle would have won the cup, what model is that? Finding castaways and trying to make a 4-line balanced attack with no superstars? You know what I mean? Like it's becoming something where it's like there really is no model.
There's many different ways to win. That's the point, right?
I don't know. I just, we can talk about the core four at the end of the day, but Joe, I think you said it. They cannot run this team back with the same coach. Or if but if you're going to bring the coach back, you can't run it back with the core four. Someone's got to move.
Agree with that.
They can't have both.
I agree with that. Like, blood is in the water, and the Sharks want something. They want some meat. So it's either you got to give them one of the core four traded or the coach. And I don't even blame Sheldon Keefe, man. It's not his fault that his best players did not produce in a series. But the coach can only do so much. But I'm willing to find out with a different coach what could happen. I mean, Pittsburgh's going to have new management. It's interesting to see what happens with Mike Sullivan. You have Joel Quenneville out there, although he'd have to get reinstated. And then you'd have all the blowback of hiring him and giving him another chance. But those are two names that I think could possibly be better. And listen, the story, everybody loves Bruce Boudreau. It's a great story.
That ain't happening.
He hasn't won anything. I'd rather just keep Keefe at that point. But I agree with you, Frankie. It's either the coach or one of those guys.
I want my time on this, but I'll let Bobby go because he wants to chime in.
I have a question for you guys. Why now? Like, what was so different about this playoffs than the last, I don't know, 2 or 3? Like,
they won a round?
They won a round, and now it's like, now we've definitely got to blow it up. I'm the Leaf mentality here of the Leaf fans it's a little shocking to me. I thought the year to blow it up was after the Montreal loss, because I said the Montreal loss was the worst loss you could possibly ask for. Better team, division rival, up 3-1, and I made an analogy that I'm not going to bring up again, but there was no coming back from that loss. And we've seen the negativity going into these last couple of playoffs. I just don't get why now is the time to move on. I look at this team and I say, you've run it back all these years. You make a trade for Marner, you make a trade for any of these guys, you're going to lose the deal, most likely. I shouldn't say you will, but you most likely they're going to lose the deal. I don't understand why now out of all the years.
That's a fair question. And especially Austin's going to be 26 years old. Mitch is going to be 27. Like, they're in the prime of their career right now. It seems a little, I know it's weird to say because, it's 7 years that they've been trying at this, but the window is still open as long as you guys, you still have these guys. Like, why are you in a rush to get rid of them now? But I'm willing to listen to offers. Of course, you got to make your team better in any way possible. And if Gretzky can be traded, anybody can be traded. If there's an offer out there that definitely makes you better, by all means, take it. But don't trade Mitch or Willie or Austin just for the sake of we got to do something different. I'd rather bet on them finding a way to knock that door down.
I think we can all agree that the first shoe to drop and the easiest one to drop is probably going to be the coach. Unfortunately, this happened with Babcock where they brought a guy in, a seasoned coach, a winning coach, ended up being a total dipshit, but they finally got the coach that they wanted. And what did they repay us with? 1 playoff victory. So if you poll 10 people, 5 would say it's a coaching problem. The other 5 would say it's a culture problem. Pick your poison, right?
See, the culture thing, I keep hearing that, and I don't mean to cut you off, Frankie. Like, during the media availability with all these players, it was interesting to hear things from players that were acquired at the deadline, for example, talking about the organization. And they spoke very highly about the culture, like O'Reilly, Shen, guys that have won cups and know what it's like to be in a cup-winning culture, spoke very highly of the Maple Leafs dressing room and the culture that's around that building. Like, here's a direct quote from Luke Shen. I thought it was very interesting. He said, "There's a really good foundation and culture here. I've been a part of a lot of organizations and played in some places where you thought yeah, there's no hope you're going to get a chance to win with this group or the way things are run here. I think, and this is truthfully speaking, the culture here is as good as anywhere that I've played. And he played in Tampa and won a cup with Tampa, by the way. The way they take care of things on a personal side, your family, the training level, nutrition, development side, details, and systems. Like, he knows what it's like to be in a winning culture. And he's saying this about this culture. Like, the culture's a problem until you win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I'm actually more talking about that quote unquote country club kind of atmosphere. That
wouldn't they say? It doesn't sound like it's that from those guys.
Okay, Joe, let's kind of go back for a second.
I know what you're gonna say. Go ahead, Bill. Go ahead.
Sheldon Keefe lost me this year when he criticized his guys and ran it back the next day for no reason other than it hurt someone's feelings. Okay. For me, that's when he lost me as
I agree. That was ridiculous.
Okay. And Joel, when I look at this team, what is the identity of this team? I still don't know. We're sitting here today, another postmortem, and I don't know what the identity of this team is. When I think the Bruins, I get an identity of a powerhouse who's tough to play against. And obviously, the big bad Bruins and all of that. When I think of Carolina, I get four lines that come at you with the best defense in the league, and they take the identity of their coach. The Leafs have the identity of being a possession team, right? Easy to play against, and they don't do the little things to win when it matters.
Do you really think that they were easy to play against in this playoff, Frankie?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Come on, man. I disagree.
Man. Just because you add Luke Shen in the back and Nola Chari finishes hits, Joe, they're easy to play against, man. They
beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. No Eastern Conference team beat them in the last 4 years. They beat them. And then, against Florida, come on. 3 of those 4 Florida wins could have gone either way. And Florida, you could talk about the Leafs got the breaks in round 1. Florida got all the breaks in round 2.
Joe.
Can't two things be right at the same time? They got unlucky, but they are also
I would
easy
say
to play against.
I'll say this.
I think two things can be right.
They improved in their ability. I thought they were tougher to play against in this playoff, but I still think there's a ways to go for that. So I don't think they're against Montreal. I thought they were easy to play against. I don't think it was that this time around.
But when I see Keefe, I think he's got out coached in almost every playoff series he's played.
Quantify that. Frankie Corrado was on the radio and I was listening to him. He had a good tell me how he was outcoached. What did he do that made him outcoached?
Well, Joe, when you look at a team that's not prepared to start or finish a playoff,
why is that the coach? These are professional hockey players. You should be. You need Herb Brooks to come in and do a speech before every game.
So are we going to have the Justin Hall discussion now or after, the Kerfoot discussion or the time on ice when your fourth line gets on the ice, when their fourth line is on and you have the home matchup and you play your fucking fourth line on an offensive draw? Now you want to quantify it?
Thank you. That's what I wanted. I wanted examples and you gave them to me. Thank you.
All right. Buddy, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, you have a guy, right, who's been given how many chances to get past? Okay, he got to the second round. Great. We're all happy for it. But that's not success. It's progress. All right?
Yes.
Okay? It's not success to me. For me, it's another failure. It's progress, but it's failure. So they had their chance last year. Bruce Cassidy was available. DeBoer was available. And now what are they at? Sloppy seconds. All right? They're the guy at the club where the girl that you wanted to talk to is now dancing with the idiot, and you get what's ever left, right? So you look at what Coach Q's going to come back. Not to that, that's going to be a fiasco. Is Laviolette a better addition? I think he is. The guy's been in the Stanley Cup final 3 times at 3 different teams. But then why did they fire Babcock? It's like going forwards and going backwards, and they don't know what they're going to do. Do they give it to Spencer Carberry, who probably is going to be interviewing for 3 jobs in the next week? You know what I mean? Again, it's change for the sake of change, but I think this change has to be done, man. You know what I would love, Joe? You know what I would love? Just to piss off Habs fans. Patrick Waugh. If he's coming back into the league, I want him behind the bench just to see the look on Habs fans' face. That would be my ideal dream scenario. But honestly, Joe,
I'd rather have Babcock back.
Yeah. they're still paying him, why not? No, that's kind of my soapbox there. I just thought Keefe's inability in times during the game, his game management was not very good. And you said it yourself. How many times are we talking in our chat? Why is the fourth line on when they don't have to be? You're trying to get a goal, and they're playing way too much than they should be.
The only reason I would suggest maybe that was happening was because there were some games where that fourth line was their best line.
Come on now.
That was
like game three. Game three, man. Austin and Mitch just completely were no-shows. So you had no choice but to put Kampf and Lafferty on. But anyways.
You should have a little tagline over Frank. The passion that unites us all.
Absolutely. I love that. We haven't seen that side of Frankie in a long time.
Well, you wanted a reason.
I put a quarter in him. Let him get that work, baby.
I'm kind of with Frank here. I don't think the culture is about the organization, because I don't think there's any question. It's a wonderful organization. I think it's the players. I think we kind of saw something similar with the Blue Jays. Not to go too in depth on that, but they traded a bunch of players, and it seemed like they were trying to change kind of the vibe in the locker room or the vibe in the clubhouse. What it looked like to me. So I think when your top four players are guys like the four that they have, I think that's what people are talking about when they say the culture, is that we've seen it for years with the bad body language, with the kind of the sulking when things get tough. I think that's when people talk about culture, they're referring to that aspect of it. So I don't think it's anything to do with the organization. I think the one thing that was kind of touch on Frankie's point about being easy to play against, when a team runs around and acts like goose the way Florida did,
I agree.
And there was nobody there to hold them accountable. Yep. I think that is in the offseason where you have to kind of address a need. I understand, like Wayne Simmons, you're worried about him playing in the series. I'm sitting here going, half of the defense was a bunch of tire fires. Why not have, like, I know you're not going to get a guy like this, but Josh Manson, like a guy that's not the greatest defenseman, but he will punch your head off your shoulders if you start acting like an idiot. Like what Gudas did at the end of the series was just so perfectly encapsulated that they did whatever they wanted that series. And I think if you bring a little bit of toughness, it'll free up a little bit of ice for Mitch and for Austin and for Will, because guys run around when they play the Leafs and they play with reckless abandon. Like the way Sam Bennett was playing and the way these guys were playing, it was like they were like bullies.
I agree with you. Yeah, I would.
And the guy that they should have played can't play anymore. So
he was
useless.
But I mean, like, can Justin Hall play? Can Jake McCabe play? Like are these guys?
Yes.
You can't put McCabe and Hall in the same.
Can they play though? Because I watched them play like not well all series. I'm just sitting there going, you need some grit and toughness. I understand.
That's a fair point, Rob. It's a fair point, but this is where I went back to not having a top end defenseman. You're elevating guys in your lineup that shouldn't be elevated, and that's what happens. You pay for it.
Right? I think part of the problem is of not pushing back and when Bennett's running around is when you get down 3-0 in a series, you have no margin for error. So if you go after that guy, you run the risk of taking a really stupid penalty, and then that costs you in the end. Perhaps if they didn't get down 3-0, they could have resolved it a little bit better. But I agree with you, man. They need something so that doesn't happen anymore.
Hey, Rob, you know who's a free agent? Radko Gudas.
Oh, I wouldn't bring him in. No, sorry, Bob.
I would.
I'm going after the toughest guy in the league.
I'm saying this: the next time Leafs play Florida, it's a regular season game. It doesn't matter, regular season game. I'm sending someone after Bennett, because what he did to Nyes, that needs to be taught a lesson. Even if it's a year later, he needs to get it.
You got to sign like the Charlestown Chiefs for
just for that one game.
Ogie Oglethorpe and all the old
Tim
dogs.
McCracken.
All right. So after they deal with what's going to happen with the core guys, let's talk about what happens on July 1st when they have a boatload of RFAs and UFAs. So we're just going to go. I'm going to name a name, and you tell me if you think they re-sign or if they should be re-signed. So let's start with the biggest one. It's Ryan O'Reilly, the big acquisition at the deadline. He's a UFA. What do you think ends up happening with him?
He's gone.
Gone.
Yeah.
I think so as well. And to be honest, we already see what's happened with Tavares as he's getting into his 30s. Not a quick player. I'm a little weary of signing O'Reilly to what he's going to want, which is going to be at least a 4, 5, 6 year deal at a big ticket with the speed that he has. It makes me a little nervous. So I'm actually okay with not signing him, even though I love him as a player and I loved having him.
It's his last payday. He's going to go get paid. He's got his cup.
I agree.
He's going back to St. Louis.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think he'll get a good contract from them as well.
Yep.
All right. What about the other guy they acquired in that deal, Noel Achari?
I think they have a shot at re-signing him. He's an American. You may have to pay him a bit, but I think you're gonna have a lot of competition against him for him.
I think they bring him back. I think he'll want to play maybe against Boston, play in the same division, stick it to him.
Well, and
I like him.
He was asked if he'd like to resign. He'd say his response was, "I'd love to." So
he's going to want term, Joe. There's another guy in his early 30s, probably going to want 2 to 3 years. So
I don't think he's that old, Frankie. Is he really early 30s?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Bobby, fact check that for me right now. I think he's in his 20s still.
Keep going.
Okay, what about David Kampf?
Nope. You have Pontus Holmberg as that guy coming in.
It depends on what his ticket would be. Like, if it's like, can you really see him getting a big raise off what he got last time?
Huh.
Yeah, he's turning 32, Achari.
Oh, wow. You're right, Frankie. My bad. See, giving term, I don't know, 4-year deal maybe for him. I wouldn't go higher than that for Achari.
Oh, for Achari, wow. No. That's why I said he's going to probably want 3 years, probably is going to be the highest I'd go. But
yeah.
I'd still do it. I think that's a guy who plays up and down your lineup.
I agree.
Camp played well in the playoffs. Like I'll give him credit. He was good in the Florida series, but I think they need to fill that role with someone that can kind of crash and bang. I think they need a banger.
Okay. Agreed. What about Michael Bunting?
Gone.
Really?
Matthew Nyes, that's your replacement.
I thought he was so ineffective. I don't think he knows what he's doing anymore. Like he wants to be the shit disturber, but he wasn't really good at it. He was good when he first came in at it, but it's like he's gotten.
You know what's going to happen with Bunting? He's going to go to sign with another team. He's going to play that physical presence, and people are going to be like, "Why'd the Leafs let him go? He's not getting called for penalties. He knows how to toe the line." It happens with us all the time.
He's got painted that brush, Joe. Joe, he's not a spring chicken either. He's going to be on the latter end of 20 as well. So
yeah.
He looked slow in that Florida series, like a lot slower than he should be for his size. So
and they don't need that type of character now with that reputation in the lineup. So I think they're going to move off of it.
Hall and Kerfoot.
They're in my truck. My car's running. I'm bringing.
I have their plane tickets ready already.
I don't mind Kerfoot. Hall's got to go. He's got to go. And I think
both players.
But no, I'm done with Kerfoot. You know why? You take away Keefe's, his go-to guys, his tools. I'm done with that. Very smart player. He did bust his ass, but no offense there.
At 3.5 too, too much money for me. I think both players probably benefit from a change of scenery.
I think Kerfoot ends up on Chicago or something. When they need to retool, he'll get his 3.5, 4 there. He'll play next to Bedard and teach him, calculus and stuff.
Totally. Justin Hall will end up on my men's league team, and we'll be all everybody will be happy.
Justin Hall is going to end up as a 6th defenseman on Buffalo or the Islanders, and he's so effective.
Okay, Frankie, how much money do you think he signs for a year?
Justin Hall?
Yeah, over under $3.5 million.
Oh, way under.
I don't know, man.
Way under.
Okay,
5 maybe.
No,
he ain't getting a raise.
Bobby, let's friendly wager that he's getting over 3.5. He's a right shot D.
Done.
I think Edmonton maybe signs him.
I'll give you 2 to 1.
You know how Edmonton loves former Leafs.
Yeah, they have Cody Ceci. Do they really want another one?
Yeah, they do.
Next.
Matt Murray.
Okay. I was thinking about this one. The best thing that could have happened was Joseph Wall playing the way he did. Joseph Wall is on this team next year.
100%.
And this actually makes Samsonov expendable. I'll tell you why. Samsonov's an RFA, okay? He's probably going to sign for what the Leafs have Murray at this year, which is about like maybe that – is that fair to say in the 4.5, 4.25 area maybe? 'Cause he's only making one and change right now.
He's
right?
going to get a raise for sure. I don't know if it gets up that high, to be honest.
Okay, so let's just say he makes 4, okay?
Okay.
You may not have to move off Murray now because you were probably going to have to add an asset to move that contract, and it's only 1 year. So he wouldn't be that bad of a mentor for Wall if you leave him as your backup because you got cost certainty with Wall for 7 and change for the next 2 years. So it's a worst case scenario. Samsonov can probably be dealt for an asset now, whether it's a first round pick or because I think he would get that, to be quite honest with you, or something else you need in your lineup. So I'm actually thinking that the Leafs have a lot of leverage here with Samsonov, and that's tied to Murray, that I don't think Murray goes. I think Murray actually stays and they move Samsonov. That's my guess.
Wow, that's a hot take. I do not see that happening. Bobby?
Do you want to trade a high-end second to move that Murray contract? I don't.
I think they buy him out, to be honest. He's got 1 year left. A buyout takes
so on a team that's paying 4 guys all that money, where cap space is so crucial, they want to add dead money on top of that. I don't know.
how much. What's 1/3 of 4.7?
1.3.
Like
You're the teacher.
1.5 for the next 2 years of dead cap. I don't know.
1.5, and you're also paying Connor Timmins 1.8 for the next 3 years, and
No,
he was
not that
ninth.
high. Not 1.8.
Was it that much? Was it, or
1.2.
let's say one? Was it 1.2 or whatever?
1.3.
Okay, as your 9th defenseman, that makes a lot of sense as well. And you want to bring back Luke Shen?
I think Timmins will get.
No, I'm not saying
10
he's
minutes.
bad.
I know
I'm
what
just
you're saying, though.
You
Yes.
see how we're managing this cap here? It's like, anyways, that Wall put them in a good situation with their goaltending. If they can move Murray, great, amazing. Then you have Samsonov. But you can also all I'm saying is you can get assets back, and having Murray as your backup is not a bad thing either.
I think it is because he can't stay healthy anymore. So
He's not playing
for backup. How much of the season is he really going to be the backup for? Are we going to see Keith Petruzzelli for most of the year as the backup? That's the problem I have with it.
Easier to find backups along the way. That's why I see it.
Mm-hmm. See. Who else?
So I think he says Shen.
Oh yeah, Luke Shen.
I think this guy loves being a Leaf, man. I think he stays. I think he stays. I know he's a West Coast boy, but he's played for that shithole in Vancouver. And, hey, maybe the Oilers try to sign him.
Yeah.
I could see that happening too, but I honestly think he stays.
In that quote where he's talking about other organizations, he's probably talking about Vancouver there.
Okay, let's talk about free agents. Kyle Dubas stays or goes?
I think he ends up staying. I think his wife signs the permission slip and allows him to stay.
It's funny. He mentioned that if he stays in Toronto, he doesn't know. If he's going to be a GM, he would stay in Toronto, but nowhere else. But did anybody catch that where maybe GM is not for him and he wants autonomy and wants to be bumped up the pole, and maybe he becomes president of hockey ops, so he doesn't have to be GM to put up with the scrutiny and with the family stuff and all that? I could see that happening as well. And anybody find a little odd that Shanahan was not speaking with him and he'll be speaking in the next few days?
I do.
So let's put the puzzle
and
pieces.
He wasn't watching the game with him, any of the games with him in the playoffs, whereas he was usually in the box with him.
What does Shanahan really do, to be quiet? Is he just a figure? Like I don't know.
You're the president.
Like in Office Space. What exactly do you do
here? I honestly think, it's Dubas making Kyle Dubas has made a lot of good moves. He did a very good job at the deadline this year. He gave them the tools to be competitive, which, you can't knock him for. But if that's him doing it, do they really need Shanahan to be the president? Like what good is? I would rather have Wayne Gretzky or Mark Messier be the president of this team. At least he gives a little bit more, pizzazz to this team, or brings back some culture, because this is not the Brendan Shanahan that we saw play. It's the soft side of the Brendan Shanahan that it's kind of, to me, it's useless to the organization, but that's how I feel.
All right. What do you? So we're almost getting up to an hour, which is typical of our postmortem. So we'll wrap it up shortly. But
actually, so before we get that,
yeah,
outside the organization, it's a pretty not a great UFA crop.
Nope.
But have there been guys that you've or Robbie or have you targeted that could be a good fit on this team? I have 3 guys.
I don't have guys in particular that I'm like aiming for, but I know what I want this team to get more of, and that's toughness, because I don't want to be pushed around like they were against Florida.
Yep.
And I want speed, because this team used to be a fast team and they didn't look fast against Florida. So I want, especially if you're going to have Tavares, who's not very fast, I think they need a little bit more speed. And on defense, if they can get someone else who can push the pace like a Morgan Riley on another pair, who can, if a team's forechecking hard, can get past those first couple forecheckers and then make a good pass.
Oh, you mean like a guy like Rasmus Sandin? Yeah, that'd be a nice.
I don't know if he's the best defensively, though.
Hey, listen, I called this last year. I told you Pontus Holmberg would be a Leaf this year, and he was. Don't be shocked to see Topi Niemela get a real look with this team next year.
If you want to win, get a Finn, and they've got Topi and they've got Ronnie as well.
There you go. I look at a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi.
I would love him. Yes,
that's a guy who, and he went to Boston. He fit right in.
He was a prick, and that's exactly what they
That's what I want.
Yep. Oh, it's true.
I have it circled here on my notes. Tougher to play against. You got it. Faster and pricks.
Yep.
I look at Tyler Bertuzzi. I look at Max Domi as a secondary level, and I look at a guy in New Jersey. His dad was a Leaf. I'd love to have Miles Wood as a Leaf.
There's his dad, Randy Wood?
Randy Wood.
Wow.
A hockey player, not an adult film star. Miles Wood would be perfect here. And those are the 3 guys I've kind of circled as, guys that would look great in the Leaf shirt. So.
All right. Let's get back together after, in the next couple weeks, after they decide who their GM's going to be and we figure out what's happening with Austin, and we'll get back with that. Also, I don't know if you guys know Mike Leaf, one of the most passionate Leaf fans out there. He's always on TV. He's always at the games. We might get him on the pod, and he is very against bringing Kyle Dubas back. So be a good little debate for us. I think it'd be a good mix. So look out for that. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been listening throughout the playoffs, throughout the season, to our pods. We really appreciate the feedback and, you guys checking it out, telling your family, your friends about it. If you can continue to do that, that would be great. And
while we're having thank yous, again, everybody and their mother has a podcast, right? It's just, I think this is something that we've done. And you know what? We've grown it pretty decently for 3 guys who just love talking about this stuff. But we're starting to get some really good play and popularity. And again, thanks to Mike Richards, who was very nice enough to have myself on regularly, and now Bobby and Joel when he's not working, to be a chance to now expand the platform. We've had a lot of great comments come my way from that, and that's how it starts. You tell 2 friends, and they tell 2 friends, and sure enough, you're on the radio and getting national exposure. And I already talked to Mike. There's going to be a lot more coming with that, and I'm excited. So thanks to the guys who drop comments on YouTube, who tweet us. We love to be challenged, so please keep it coming. I'm just checking the analytics. Just in the last 2 weeks of round 2, coming back from round 1, we've had over 10,000 impressions. People looking at our videos and stuff. And again, for a little pod like ours, it's been great, and only more things to come from us. So this has been awesome.
Absolutely. And one last thing, my little last minute spiel here. Joe Bowen announced that he doesn't have a contract for next year. If this damn team doesn't allow for us to hear the Joe Bowen call, and you know what Joe Bowen call I'm talking about, if he if the powers that be don't bring him back and we get someone else making that call, I'm going to be very, very annoyed because he is the best in the business. It's too bad we don't get to listen to him on TV and get our own home broadcast, but it is what it is. Hopefully, Bonesy, you get back in the booth for as long as you can do it, buddy, because you're the best. So
I hope they don't do that whole simulcast thing they're doing with the Jays. That's just
it's terrible.
That's just wrong.
All right. I'm Joe Choffs with the boys, Coach Frank, Bobby Bottles, the Puck and Leafs podcast for another year, another season. Let's go Leafs.